Who are the true illegal immigrants? Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, ahchyam, Yahweh Shai, ahchyam Rachakadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, ahchyam, Yahweh Shai. Now I just wanted to do a video real quick based on this news article here called Supreme Court Rules Thousands of Immigrants Can Be Detained Indefinitely. Now, one thing about our nation of people, when I say our nation of people, I speak of the true biblical Hebrew Israelites, which are the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indians. And over the years of us being in captivity, we have been brainwashed and westernized and misled and led to believe that we are foreigners to a land that really belonged to us. Now, if we come over here to the definition of immigrant, right? This is the definition of immigrant from google.com.
Immigrant.
And it says, an immigrant is a person who comes to live permanently in a foreign country. So, who lived in this country long before the so-called elites and the rest of their nation of people came over here to live in this? Who was living in this country back in the 14th and 13th century? The so-called Native Indians, which would consist of the Taino Indians, which would be the so-called Puerto Ricans today, the Aztec Indians, which would be the so-called Guatemalans today, or the so-called Mexicans today. Okay, the Cherokee, the Choctaw Indians, which will be the so-called North American Indians, the Seminole Indians, which will be from the tribe of Reuben of the nation of Israel, the so-called Puerto Ricans, which are the Taino Indians, are from the tribe of Ephraim, the Aztec Indians, which are the Guatemalans, to the Mexicans and Panamanians. The so-called Mexicans are from the tribe of Issachar, the nation of Israel. Guatemalans and Panamanians are from the tribe of Zebulun of the nation of Israel. The Seminole Indians are from the tribe of Reuben of the nation of Israel. Okay, the so-called Canadians. Okay, those are a lot of so-called North American Indians migrated up into that land. And why is that? Well, that's because when the biblical Edomites, which will be what? The conquistadors, the English Dutch mercenaries, when Christopher Columbus, who was also a biblical Edomite, when he came over here, okay, what did he discover? Did he discover America, or did he discover that there were so-called natives living on this land? But you see, the biblical Edomites today, they like to go around telling our people to go back to your land, go back to where you came from. But wait a minute, this land belongs to the so-called the so-called Native Indians. And when I say Native Indians, I'm talking about the Taino Indians, okay, the Aztec Indians, the Seminole Indians, the so-called North American Indians, and the Seminole Indians. Which are all Israelites. But again, when the biblical Edomites first came over to this land, speaking of the English Dutch mercenaries, the conquistadors, the Spaniards, when they first came over to this land with Christopher Columbus, what did Christopher Columbus discover? He discovered that this land was being inhabited by so-called native Indians. So what did he do? Well, he went back to his country, or he sent some people back to his country to bring some Hebrew interpreters. Why did he do that? Because the so-called natives of this land were Hebrew Israelites speaking Hebrew. So the real immigrants are really the Edomites. Okay? You are the real immigrants. And that's starting with the so-called elites, trickling down to the rest of their nation of people. Okay? You are the true illegal immigrants. You don't belong in this country. This country was foreign to you people. Until you came over here, until your forefathers came over here, discovered that so-called natives were living in this land, and then you slaughtered and murdered every single native. Well, you slaughtered and murdered a vast majority of the so-called natives of this land, and the remainings that survived, they either got tortured or they were forced to relocate, like the so-called Mexicans. So-called Mexicans was not inhabiting. They was not predominantly inhabiting the land of Mexico. No, the so-called Mexicans were they were natural inhabitants of the land of North America. But what happened? Y'all forced and pushed them down into what would be called Mexico, which Mexico is not even its true name. Okay, I believe Mexico comes from Mexico is a Spanish name. That place was not called Mexico. But you forced the so-called Mexicans down into the land of Mexico. And then you had the nerve, you Edomites had the nerve to call them illegal immigrants. Same thing with the Puerto Ricans. They were also once natural inhabitants of the land of North America. But what happened? They were forced to relocate, and they got pushed out of their land. A lot of them got shipped over there to the land of Puerto Rico, and they became slaves mining for gold and silver. That's why that place is called Puerto Rico, which the word Puerto Rico means rich port. So that land was not called Puerto Rico originally. That land was called something else. But again, Puerto Rico is Spanish. So the Spaniards are responsible for pushing the Taino as well as the Aztec Indians out of North America. Okay, and the Spaniards were the ones who made the so-called Puerto Ricans slaves on the land of so-called Puerto Rico. Had them mining in mines and things like that, looking for gold and silver and precious stones and other precious materials, REMs, which is an acronym for rare earth metals or minerals. The Edomites did this. They put our people in slavery. But it was prophesied for that to happen in the Holy Scriptures. So now the Lord is turning the tables. Okay, the so-called Guatemalans and Panamanians. which are also Aztec Indians. They got pushed down into South America, and they were forced to be slaves down there. But anyways, what is the difference between legal immigrants and undocumented immigrants? Which undocumented immigrants is just a polite way of saying illegal immigrants. Legal immigrants are foreign-born people legally admitted to the United States. And how are we foreign-born to the United States when the United States of America belongs to our people? You see the hypocrisy in this? Undocumented or illegal immigrants, also called illegal aliens, are foreign-born people who do not possess a valid visa or other immigration documentation because they entered the United States without inspection, stayed longer than their temporary visa permitted, or otherwise violated the terms under which they were admitted. So not only did these Edomites kick you out of your native land, they called you illegal immigrants on top of that. But according to the Holy Scriptures, there's a judgment that must come out for that, man. Is that what was that? What was that? What was that scripture? Let's see. Let's go to the King James BibleOnline.org. So I frequently go here. Okay. Psalms chapter 7 verse 11. Psalms chapter 7 verse 11. It says, God, also known as Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, judgeth the righteous, and Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, is angry with the wicked every day. So the Lord is angry with the wicked every day. Okay? And the wicked predominantly are the biblical Edomites. And that's starting with the so-called elites, trickling down to the rest of their nation of people. Okay? They are the wicked. They are predominantly the wicked spoken of throughout the Holy Scriptures. Okay? And a matter of fact, if we go to the book of Job, chapter 9 verse 24, it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. What does that mean? That means the wicked has control over the earth today. Who has control over the earth today? The so-called elites do. They have control over the earth through their monetary banking system. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. Okay, the judges of old of the Holy Scriptures will be the prophets and the servants of the Lord. Okay, like Peter, Paul, James, Jude, John the Revelator. Okay, John, John the Baptist. You know, Daniel, Obadiah, Habakkuk, Nahum, Job, King David, King Solomon, who the world calls Jesus. These were all the judges, but the main judge is who the world calls Jesus. Okay, he came 2,000 years ago to prophesy, but also to condemn the wickedness of the world. So what it says, he covered up the faces of the judges thereof, what is that talking about? Iconoclasm. Okay, and what is iconoclasm? When you paint over an image. So the dark-skinned images of the apostles and the prophets of old, they were painted over by who? Highly skilled painters like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. That's why we see a bunch of whitewashed images today, which those are not the true images. According to the Holy Scriptures, the ancient prophets and the servants of the Lord, and who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, they were all dark-skinned men with white. They were all dark-skinned men. Okay, in the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 13, all the way down to 16, it tells you that who the world ignorantly calls Jesus is a dark-skinned man with white woolly hair, and his eyes was red because he drank a lot of wine. So it says, if not where and who is he? Right. So who's responsible for painting over these dark-skinned images? Well, the so-called white man. But anyways, you know, the Lord is angry with the wicked every day, man. Now let's get that in the book of Job. What is that? Chapter 15, verse 1. No, the book of Job, chapter 18, verse 1. Oh. Job, chapter 18, verse 1. The house of hypocrites. The house of hypocrites shall be made desolate. For the house of hypocrites shall be made desolate. So I had a feeling it was in the book of Job. Okay? Job chapter 15 verse 34. For the congregation of hypocrites, this country is the congregation of hypocrites. For the congregation of hypocrites shall be desolate, and fire shall consume the tabernacles of bribery. Okay, and what is this talking about? During World War III, there's going to be a nuclear war that's going to take place. And during that nuclear war, Russia, China, and North Korea and Iran, they're going to shoot their nukes on Babylon, which is the congregation of hypocrites, in which this country is Babylon. Okay, with that I'm going to say Shalom is on to the next one.